For 26 years, Richard Taliaferro thrived in the newsrooms of the Wall Street Journal, leaving as senior news editor in 2023. He is now a career coach who helps mid-career professionals, especially Gen Xers, journalists, and mission-driven storytellers navigate career transitions with clarity, courage, and purpose. Richard, how are you today?
Good, Matthew. How are you doing?
Doing very well, thank you.
Thanks for
So,
having me on.
you're very welcome. So, we'll jump into a little bit about journalism. So, what is journalism?
Oh, wow. Journalism is telling people what is going on in the world. And it can be anywhere from newspapers, which still do exist,
Mhm.
to websites that many of those newspapers do have, and TV news programs, the local news, the cable news programs, the national news programs, and still radio as well.
Mhm.
All of those groups work,
Mhm.
work more or less in concert to help people understand
Mhm.
the stories that are going on in their world right now. They could be very local, anywhere from talking about what's happening in the latest school board meeting to what's happening in Ukraine
Mhm.
and everything in between.
Mhm. Okay. And what's the difference between journalism and investigative journalism?
That's a branch. And I think one of the easiest ways to discuss investigative journalism is to think about the Watergate hearings and the story around Watergate. That was investigative journalism where two journalists, Woodward and Bernstein, got information about President Nixon and worked for months, years
Mhm.
to really nail down that story and to tell that story. And one of the things with investigative journalism is, especially, is it can move the needle, as it were. And you know, and in the case of Watergate, it took down a president,
Mhm.
and it's what investigative journalism does is it really delves into a controversial subject,
Mhm.
sometimes a subject that people in power don't want to talk about,
Mhm.
but they bring it to light and they bring it to our attention as citizens and help us understand what's happening. And one of the things that investigative journalism can do is it really change the course of uh, school, if there's a school investigation happening or a presidential administration. It can definitely change the course of how that administration is going about its business.
Mhm.
And it's the best of it is kind of painstaking sometimes. It doesn't take minutes or even days
Mhm.
for a story or a series of stories to come to fruition. It can take weeks, months, even years.
Mhm. Okay. When I think of investigative journalists, first couple people that come to mind would be like a Matt Taibbi or Glenn Greenwald. Those are kind of the
Mm,
first two that come to
yeah.
mind for me.
Mm.
So when you think of investigative journalism, who's maybe the first person or two where you're like, yes, that's an investigative journalism. Yeah.
It's actually Woodward and Bernstein.
Okay.
And because they spent so much time
Mhm.
chasing down leads in the Watergate investigation.
Mhm.
And also one person to keep in actually two people to keep in mind. And
Mhm.
when we're talking about that story in the Washington Post are Ben Bradley, the
Mhm.
executive editor of the Washington Post at that time, and Catherine Graham, the publisher of the Post. You know, and all the unsung editors working on the stories alongside Woodward and Bernstein,
Mhm.
because doing those stories, it takes a certain amount of courage
Mhm.
to do them, because you have very big organizations pushing against the newspaper
Mhm.
to try to in a lot of cases suppress the story.
Mhm.
And it takes the courage of the person running the newsroom and the person running the newspaper
Mhm.
to stand up to that power
Mhm.
and to let the light shine on an administration that may not want that light to be there.
Okay. What about current day in terms of when you think of an investigative journalist, a name that comes to mind?
I'm sort of, I'm not, you know, I'm sort of drawing a blank a little bit because you have a lot of great investigative journalism happening, not just at the national level, but the regional and local level too, where, a lot of unsung heroes are
Mhm.
going out into their communities and really turning rocks over
Mhm.
to help improve their communities where they hear about, you know, malfeasance in a certain department or an a state agency, for example, and they really delve into that because we as citizens are, we are at the receiving end of that malfeasance, so to speak.
Mhm.
And those people, those investigative journalists are really protecting us. So,
Mhm.
you know, there's lots of great work being done that should be celebrated.
Okay. So, moments ago, when I was asking about, say, the definition of journalism, is a nice, kind of clear, concise answer, which I appreciated. And but what's the bar where that bar is not met to hit that definition, where somebody maybe is claiming to be a journalist or wanting to be a
Mm,
journalist, but doesn't hit what you consider in that definition, which was very clear and concise that you provided, where, hold on a sec, not a journalist, doesn't
yeah.
hit that bar.
It's weird these days where, lots of people can go out and sort of, do research on something. But I think one of the things that separate journalists from non-journalists is it's a group effort. It's a team effort. It's not just the reporter going out and covering the story, interviewing subjects, doing the research. It's also editors who are checking with the reporter on their work. They're asking questions of the editor, of the reporter, to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. And sometimes in solo sort of solo quote unquote journalist world,
Mhm.
you don't have that second set of eyes or even third set of eyes to really make sure that the the story makes sense and we're not making stories up, as it were.
Okay. I'd love to talk more about coaching journalists. We're going to get into that, the career coaching for journalists. I'd love to
Sure.
talk more about that.
Mhm.
Before we do, 26 years thriving at the Wall Street Journal. I want to hear about that. So tell me about your experience at the Wall Street Journal.
I mean, it's I when I started at the Journal, it was towards the end of late 1997, and WSJ.com was you know one of was starting to grow as a website,
Mhm.
and the Journal was very smart in the beginning to make sure that it was a paid site because the thought I believe was the reporting and the editing in the Journal is a premium product, and so people should have to pay for that
Mhm.
even online. So I think that was a very smart move. And starting at the Journal, the front page of the Journal looked the same as it did when I was born in the early 70s.
Mhm.
No, no real changes at all, just very dense black and white copy, some charts, some what we would call headshots, sort of head cuts, as the journal called them. And, when I left the journal, I was senior news editor for the video team,
Mm-hmm.
and, which I think at that time had about 4 million YouTube subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
And, and there was a point where the video team was producing half a dozen live shows that were being streamed on WSJ.com on the website. So I'd really seen everything in that 26 years. And you think of every big major story that happened between 1997 and 2023, and I was, covering it or editing stories about it at
Mm-hmm.
some point.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience there included 3 years in Brussels working on the news desk of the Wall Street Journal Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I was news production editor for a while, and I was corporate news editor for a while. So I've got some international experience. It's really I really do cherish my time at the Journal because it was really impressive to work around such an impressive group of people.
Mm-hmm.
Really smart reporters, really smart editors, working together. And, I tell people now that sometimes being there was like playing the Super Bowl every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's you can't make a mistake. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of pressure there,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of spotlights there. And I think that helped me show up better every time I walked into the newsrooms.
Okay. So in addition to working with impressive people and smart people and a dynamic team, what's another of your favorite parts about having worked there?
Um, you know, one part is actually commuting into the city.
Mm-hmm.
I live in New Jersey. I used to commute into Manhattan, and on a regular basis, I would be on the train, was pulling into Penn Station going, wow, I still can't believe that I'm working in Manhattan and can't believe that I'm walking into the newsroom of the Wall Street Journal. It
Mm-hmm.
was, even 20 plus years into that feeling was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think I hope it helped me show up better in
Mm-hmm.
the newsroom
Mm-hmm.
and to not take for granted where I was
Mm-hmm.
and how important the work that I was doing was as
Mm-hmm.
well.
What was one of your least favorite parts about your 26 years at the
Oh, um, I think it's always having to be on,
Mhm.
and especially the last 10 years, only because, with our connected devices nowadays, emails and text and Slack messages
Mhm.
come through really all the time. The Journal is a global news organization, and the Journal has bureaus literally across the world. And so somebody is always reporting on something, there's always messages coming through, and
Mhm.
it's sort of lived on the edge a little bit because the world being what it is, you never knew when breaking news was going to happen.
Mhm.
And you'd have to, sometimes, on a weekend, you might be out with family or friends or a significant other, and the phone starts ringing,
Mhm.
you know, the messages start coming through and go, okay, got to go back into work mode now.
Mhm.
So that could be difficult. to do,
Mhm.
to handle, because you never really felt like you could be off.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
never really could. Because again, it's just the nature of the beast.
Mhm.
There's news happening 24/7,
Mhm.
and somebody's got to cover it. And breaking news doesn't always respect your time off.
Mhm. Okay.
You know.
What's one more of your least favorite parts?
Um, wow. I think there's a certain amount of stress. There is a lot of stress
Mhm.
in journalism
Mhm.
in terms of, you know, that, breaking news, never knowing when that's going to come through,
Mhm.
having to deal with deadlines all the time,
Mhm.
having to, I did get a charge every day when coming into a newsroom.
Mhm.
And there's also a certain amount of stress there because you have, there's a standard that you have to uphold.
Mhm.
And that brings stresses there as well, where you've got to be, you know, you have to bring your A game every day.
Mhm.
And that brings up a certain amount of stress.
Mhm.
And again, going back to what we talked about earlier, sometimes it's hard to take a day off
Mhm.
because you have to go back in that newsroom and go back into that maelstrom
Mhm.
every, the next day, on Monday,
Mhm.
so it's you're constantly in that cycle of,
Mhm.
you know, managing. That's, it, when you're in a newsroom, that stress is not going to go away, but you have to learn how to manage it.
Mhm. Okay. We might have listeners who are thinking about getting into journalism, whether it's changing careers into journalism, or they're college age thinking about getting into the field,
Mhm.
or their parents they have a child who's thinking about entering. So tell me a little bit about your experience from high school leading into college and how you chose the field and entered the field.
Sure. I mean, I seemingly always wanted to be a journalist. You know, you know, I was in the Boy Scouts, and my first merit badge in Boy Scouts was in journalism.
Mhm.
Back when I was 11 years old, and in high school, you know, came from a small town. We had grades 8 through 12, and I was on a high school newspaper staff for the 5 years. 2 years as the editor of the paper.
Mhm.
College sort of went through that same sort of process again and was editor of the college newspaper. And I got to the journal through an internship.
Mhm.
I was an intern, I was a copy editing intern at the journal one summer. Some summer before I started. And so I think, like a lot of us who are in newsrooms, we come into journalism, you know, from the very beginning,
Mhm.
from the time we could write almost,
Mhm.
because we had a curiosity about the world, and journalism was a way to work with that curiosity.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, work, so it's, you know, being quote unquote a lifer
Mhm.
in this field is not unusual
Mhm.
at all. You
Mhm.
know, you know, people, a lot of us, again, in high school, and we do a couple of internships while we are in college. I did 3
Mhm.
internships, and it's, those are good ways of getting newsroom experience,
Mhm.
on a pro level as well.
Okay. And from a very early stage in your career, you were an editor, almost right out of the gate, right? So how does that work from the internships to then editor? That
Well, I think for me, the three internships I had, only one was just a straight up editor.
Mhm.
The other two was, one of those was with the weekly newspaper.
Mhm.
And with weekly newspapers, you do everything.
Mhm.
You write, you edit, you lay out the paper, you take photographs, you know, and it's a really good way to really see how the paper comes together,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And then the other internship I had was actually a reporting internship
Mhm.
for a daily newspaper.
Mhm.
So, I was many days where I come into the newsroom, get my assignment, and go out and do the reporting for that story, come back,
Mhm.
write the story, work with the editor to polish it, make it better, and see my byline in the paper the next day,
Mhm.
or maybe a couple of days off. So I'm grateful that I had that breadth of experience from a weekly newspaper to a small-ish to mid-sized daily to a national
Mhm.
daily.
Mhm.
I think it gave me a good perspective on how newspapers come together.
Mhm. Okay. And what was a key ingredient in your success? Starting at, if memory serves, from your LinkedIn bio at the Wall Street Journal, copy editor, but then
Mm-hmm.
leaving as a senior editor
Mm-hmm.
years later. So talk to me about that progression and what enabled your success, a key ingredient for your success.
Sure. I think one thing was not doing just one thing.
Hmm.
I started out at the Journal as copy editor for the national desk, was then copy editor for the front page of the Journal.
Hmm.
And, you know, in over that 26 years, did a lot of different things. I worked with, you know, the Globe and Mail and newspaper in Toronto, Canada.
Hmm.
You know, and did some TV work for 4 years as well with CNBC and Fox Business. It's when interesting opportunities come up,
Hmm.
it's good to be curious about them
Hmm.
and not necessarily think, okay, I'm a copy editor. This is all I can do. And I don't really want to do anything else. I tried to be curious enough to go and look at different things. I mean, the last 15 or so years of my career at the Journal were really in TV and video.
Hmm.
I did not go to school for TV or video,
Hmm.
but I tried to be adaptable. And I think that's a key. And I think that's a key piece of it is just being curious enough to be able to tell stories and help tell stories in a different way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And one more question before we jump into the career coaching
Sure.
and maybe we'll toggle back later to some
Mhm.
Wall Street Journal. What's an example of something that we'll say was contentious? Meaning earlier I heard that there could be a governmental administration or maybe even a corporation that is maybe pushing on a newspaper and the powers that be, so to speak, whereas the newspaper wants to do reporting, but then there's this power that says, no, hold on, we don't want that out there.
Mhm.
So, what's an example where you kind of ran into that, where it was this tough decision? I'm sure there were a few of them where there was this in the newsroom, there was this healthy debate about, hey, can we move forward with this because we're getting,
Mhm.
this would take a lot of courage to do, and how that debate played out in the newsroom.
You know, you know, even as a news editor, sometimes you hear about these things, but you're not in on the discussions for these stories.
Mhm.
It's not unusual for the Journal to be involved in those types of stories. Like a good example is the Theranos story from
Mhm.
a few years ago.
Mhm.
And, our reporter working on a story did such a fantastic job on reporting that story and writing it as well. And in situations like that, lawyers for, the opposite side might want to get involved and, you know, want to meet with the editors of the paper, the top editors of the paper, to, to try to,
Mhm.
make sure that story doesn't run.
Mhm.
And in that case, it takes a lot of courage from the editors of the paper to resist that
Mhm.
that push from those lawyers
Mhm.
to stop this, try to put a stop to the story.
Mhm.
And it's also incumbent, as it was in this case, for the reporter to have everything nailed down.
Mhm.
It's when, if the story is airtight, rock solid, perfect,
Mhm.
it doesn't give, people room to try to manipulate or even intimidate,
Mhm.
a paper from not running the story.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find this all very interesting, so I think I want to toggle back to this
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
so career coaching for
Yeah.
journalists, that's also a passion of mine, coaching. So I'd love
Mm-hmm.
to jump into that. And I
Yeah.
think on your website it said something where earlier in this episode, I heard even from a young age, you
Mm-hmm.
knew you were on a journalism track, right? So
Right.
on the website, I think as the years went on, you kind of had like almost like a backup plan of
Mm-hmm.
coaching.
Yeah.
So when did that backup plan start to manifest, or start to come into your mind, and how did it manifest over the years for coaching?
Sure. I mean, for years now, you know, I think the field, the industry of journalism has been the business of it. It's been a little bit on shaky ground.
Mhm.
The function is important, but the business model is weakening.
Mhm.
And so I felt that about 10 years ago
Mhm.
when the journal was offering buyouts
Mhm.
at some point. And I went, okay, I need to have a plan B. I need to have a backup plan.
Mhm.
And I've always been in interested in personal development.
Mhm.
And my life was changed by a coach,
Mhm.
by a nutrition coach.
Mhm.
Working with her 10 years beforehand,
Mhm.
it helped me get on a healthier path
Mhm.
in life because I was overweight then, you know, not really a good thing for somebody in their mid to late 30s.
Mhm.
And through this coach, I've kept up so much of this
Mhm.
and went, okay, I think coaching might be it,
Mhm.
might be the thing.
Mhm.
And I started looking around for coaching schools, coaching, places where I could get a certificate,
Mhm.
and found this group, Health Coach Institute.
Mhm.
And what was great was I could take classes for certification while I was still working.
Mhm.
So I would, go into the office, go into the newsroom, work there all day, come back home, do my coaching school lessons, work with other coaches on skills, programs, and also try to work with practice clients at the same time.
Mhm.
So, you know, having the part-time job of getting that done while I was working as well. A little bit exhausting, but I think in the end worth it.
Mhm.
And got the certifications. I actually had two of them, and proceeded not to do anything with them for years because, you know, it was a back, like like we talked about, it was a backup plan.
Mhm.
I had it in my back pocket, not if the day came that I was laid off, but when.
Mhm.
And through the years, kept up with the lessons, go back to them. If I had a particularly frustrating day at work, I'd go back into these lessons and take a look at them just as a refresher. And knew as I was getting older, I knew that, okay, at some point, this plan B is going to be plan A.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up happening was 2 years ago, I got the layoff call.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always shock when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
And, having to deal with that shock, and it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Then I remembered, hey, I've got 2 coaching certifications.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I've wanted to do for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's go time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be a coach. And the original plan was for me to be a health coach
Mm-hmm.
because that was near and dear to my heart. I've been running for years, really meant a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
But people started coming, and a few people come to me wanting advice on their careers.
Mm-hmm.
And went, okay, that's where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I made the pivot, put a stake in the ground
Mm-hmm.
and said, okay, I'm going to do career transition coaching because that's what I'm working through right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are people wondering what the next steps in their careers are going to look like, want to look like. And, it's, I feel good about the coaching that the programs that I have. It's, I didn't realize at the time though
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to have to learn how to run a business
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. And so that's been a big learning experience for me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the curiosity that I had in journalism, I have to bring to being an entrepreneur as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have to keep telling myself that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So this nutrition coach that was impactful to you, and so what made her effective as a coach?
Um, it was sitting down with me on a one-to-one basis.
Mm-hmm.
And like, at that time it was face to face. We didn't have Zoom or even Skype at that time. So we had to do it face to face. And so sitting down with her
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, we went through, a 12-week program,
Mm-hmm.
and I had quote unquote homework
Mm-hmm.
to do every week.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to be, there was a part of me that felt like I had to be accountable to her,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but as I came through the program, it's like I'm being accountable to me
Mm-hmm.
while I'm doing this. And it really, I think, sort of cemented in me that this coaching thing is actually pretty cool
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, it's like, you know, is this going to work? How effective is this going to be? But if you go through a program, career coaching, health coaching, what have you,
Mm-hmm.
it may not seem like there's much happening in the first couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of its time together,
Mm-hmm.
you notice something very different about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's sort of like, is this really happening? Is this change really happening? And that's one of the cool things about it is as a coach, seeing the light for people come on inside of them
Mm-hmm.
and and playing a role in that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, we're both coaches. We're not doing it
Mm-hmm.
for them, we are working alongside them.
Hmm.
And that's always cool to see.
Hmm. Sure. And talk to me a little bit about Richard pre-nutrition coach, right? So what was the before? What did that look like?
It, you know, this it was a period between when I got back from Brussels and was working at one of the journal's suburban offices.
Hmm.
All right. And, in Brussels, you know, didn't need a car.
Hmm.
Public transportation was good, but I walked a lot.
Hmm.
I walked a lot. And getting back to suburban New Jersey, had to have a car and you have to drive everywhere. So that's one, so I didn't get the exercise. Two, you know, fast food, single guy, wasn't really into cooking anything. There was a McDonald's in town, you know, and so you go there quite a bit.
Hmm.
That combination of sedentary lifestyle plus not good food led to me putting on pounds that I really shouldn't have put on. And it, you know, granted, even working with her, it built the foundation for thinking about food differently.
Hmm.
It was really about food. It wasn't really about exercise. And so it really drove the point home that, wow, if I do eat better, I look better, I feel better, you know, life is a little bit better.
Hmm.
And so it, and I think it shows her effectiveness as a coach because it's been almost 20 years
Hmm.
since I've worked with her. And I still remember so much of what she
Hmm.
instilled in me
Hmm.
and how to think about the food differently. And I think that's what coaches do.
Wow. Okay. What was one of your go-tos at McDonald's?
Oh God. Sad to say, chicken McNuggets and French fries.
Okay.
McDonald's French fries are good, and I think maybe part of me missed the Belgian frites, Belgian French
Hmm.
fries, and the thing is, it's like after you know, I think as the years have gone on,
Hmm.
it's I can't eat that stuff anymore.
Hmm.
I can't. My body will rebel. If
Hmm.
you know, if I if I was on the road and didn't bring anything with me, maybe I would stop off and grab something, and keep on driving. But I think a lot differently about food now
Hmm.
than I did back then. And food, one of the things she talked about was that food is medicine.
Hmm.
And so are you putting good medicine in your body or bad medicine?
Hmm.
And that's the thing. And sort of, it makes me, you know, I don't pause as much anymore because my foundation is different when
Hmm.
it comes to it.
Okay. And sticking with this kind of pre-nutrition coach,
Yeah.
Richard, right?
Yeah.
I guess what connected you or how did you connect with this specific nutrition coach?
Through a friend, and she was starting out
Hmm.
as a coach and needed clients, and there was synergy there.
Hmm.
And so, okay, and this, she wouldn't say volunteer, and I didn't volunteer to do this, but you know, maybe serendipity. She needed a client.
Hmm.
She needed clients without me really knowing it. I needed somebody to help me think about food differently,
Hmm.
and that's how it came about.
Okay. And I heard earlier this kind of working alongside, right? How a coach
Yeah.
works alongside a
Yes.
client, and that the accountability that goes with that, and having somebody in it with you, right? Where you're not alone.
Hmm.
And but I also heard that it's been many years since you worked with her, right? So like, how have you been able to keep that accountability and that consistency over the years? Because you see sometimes like the get healthy quick scheme where somebody
Hmm.
drops a whole bunch
Yep.
of pounds, or they get healthy for a few months or a year,
Hmm.
and then it starts coming back. More
Hmm.
McDonald's creeps in,
Yeah.
less exercise, and back to where it started. So how have you been able to sustain your lifestyle post coaching accountability with
I
her?
think one major reason is running.
Hmm.
I've been running since 2013.
Hmm.
I've done one marathon, half a dozen marathon, half a dozen. No, take that back. A dozen half marathons.
Hmm.
And so running, helps keep me accountable
Hmm.
to that because I can't run 11 miles like I did this morning, fueled by chicken McNuggets and French fries and Diet Coke.
Hmm.
That's not going to work.
Hmm.
And so, you make a decision about what you want to do in your life and how you want to feel what you want to do.
Hmm.
And, in the beginning, it's always difficult because, yeah, the chicken McNuggets taste great, but they're not going to help you get through those long miles.
Hmm.
The right fuel, right nutrition is going to help you do that.
Hmm.
And so, what's important for me as somebody who wants to be healthy, somebody who wants to run, is putting the right fuel in my body.
Hmm.
And so, I'm consciously doing that, you know, making sure that, I cook a lot now,
Hmm.
much more than I did when I came back to the US from Brussels. And that being able to do that fuels my body
Hmm.
and also fuels my spirit because, there's a sense of accomplishment in being able to feed yourself.
Hmm.
I make for the past year, once a week, I've made a loaf of bread
Hmm.
and an air fryer.
Hmm.
And I'm really proud of that
Hmm.
because you would think it's difficult to do, but it's not. It's just water, flour, salt, yeast,
Hmm.
mix them all up, let it all sit for a couple of hours, throw it in the air fryer and about 20, bake it for about 20 or 30 minutes and it's done. From these disparate ingredients, you get something that feeds you. And so those things help keep me going with the running. And they also, because, you know, I am, you know, I feel like the healthier I can be, the better I can show up for myself and the better I can show up for my clients.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I can be able to demonstrate that, hey, it's, you know, doing the running, it's hard, but you get a sense of accomplishment out of it as
Hmm.
well.
Okay. I heard earlier some McDonald's and some fries and so on.
Mm.
These days, who's your Lex Luthor of foods? Where it's like, oh, this I gotta watch out for this one if it creeps back in, where it's dangerous.
Mm, I think sweets.
Hmm.
I try to avoid most candies.
Hmm.
Um, it's the crazy thing about food is sometimes, you know, we say we try to put the package of cookies like far away that it's going to be hard to get, and we make it, we make it forbidden fruit,
Mhm.
and then what ends up happening is we eat the entire bag,
Mhm.
you know, and my strategy has been, okay, if I want to have a a bag of stroop waffles, which are these tiny little um, waffles with like a layer of caramel or something in between them, I would just go to Trader Joe's and like, okay, I'm gonna buy a small bag of these things, eat them, be done with them, rather than try to deny myself of that and then end up eating 5 bags,
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Sure. What's one of your power foods, one of your go-tos, kind of tried and true
Mm,
nutritional power foods that you is almost a no-brainer for like what you know it's doing good for you?
apples.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I apples, cherries,
Hmm.
um, these things that they're good to eat, they're good for you. It's good fuel for your body. And you know, those are some of the best foods that you can eat are sort of, you know, inexpensive.
Hmm.
Sometimes the McDonald's bills, and
Hmm.
to be honest with you, the Starbucks bills,
Hmm.
they add up quick.
Hmm.
And having, being able to have other things in your refrigerator in your pantry that are actually going to fuel you better,
Hmm.
it's going to be better for you in the long
Hmm. Okay. So, coming back to that backup plan, so to speak, where,
run.
okay,
Yeah.
leaving Wall Street Journal,
Mhm.
I've trained as a coach, I've
Mhm.
gotten
Mhm.
certifications, right? I've been thinking about this. I had a great coach who I learned from, and here you are, and to focus maybe in health coaching, right? But what's the Mike Tyson saying? All perfect plans get thrown out when you get punched in the face, and then but
Exactly.
it's like, all right, this is my plan, health, but then all of a sudden journalists start coming your way, and storytellers and Gen Xers. So you wanted to go the health route, but here's this
Mhm.
opportunity. So how did that start to materialize between your types of clients and type of career coaching that came your way?
You know, I think people want it's journalists are kind of unique in that they have an identity. I wouldn't say necessarily fixed, but they have a pretty strong identity to being journalists.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult for them to see themselves doing anything else other than that. And it's, a lot of that is because it's to an extent a public service.
Mhm.
And I mean, I've dealt with this in the beginning, especially in the beginning, where am I betraying my ideals as a journalist to become a coach?
Mhm.
And I struggle with that. And I think what I've done is rethink how I use my skills
Mhm.
that I learned in newsrooms to coaching now.
Mhm.
And what I tried to do is bring that curiosity that I had about the world
Mhm.
to the coaching relationship
Mhm.
and asking questions of people. So, and also bringing my listening skills
Mhm.
as well and to the frame and helping them sort of be seen and really trying to understand what my skills are. And it's one of the things that we do, when we work together is what skills do you have? as a journalist, and how can you use those skills in a different way?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's, you know, the work a day world, even in insurance, like we tend to be one trick ponies,
Mm-hmm.
and being, you know, all I know how to do is copy edit,
Mm-hmm.
or all I know how to do is to report on stories. And the thing is, the skills that you've built as a journalist, in writing, in reporting, can be used in different ways
Mm-hmm.
with different industries. You
Mm-hmm.
know, let's go back to investigative journalism for a second.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that is having to manage a big project
Mm-hmm.
across many different areas. You're working with outside sources to gather the story. You're working on research, to to help bolster the story. You're working with editors to make the story better. You're working with graphic design and photographers and artists to to tell the story in a visual way. You're working with bosses to make sure that they're comfortable with what you have. That's another way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sitting down and understanding what you've done and how can we help you see what you've done in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It sounds like some of those skills and some of that experience at the Wall Street Journal and in journalism, such as curiosity and such as questioning, are translatable and very useful in coaching.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
okay, what's one of your go-to coaching questions that you use in coaching sessions to help a client either talk things through or think things through or provoke some thought?
How do you know that's true?
Hmm.
All right. It's we all tell stories about ourselves,
Hmm.
right? But how do we know those stories are true?
Hmm.
Right. So it's so it, it's about taking a step back and going, okay, what's the story that we're telling ourselves here?
Hmm.
Okay. What's the story? Sort of getting that grounded.
Hmm.
How do you know that story is true?
Hmm.
Okay. Is it somebody else saying that or you saying that to yourself?
Hmm.
And the third thing is, what else might be true?
Hmm.
And sort of, and that question, I think, extends possibilities.
Hmm.
It it reframes things and it helps people sort of, if not have an aha moment at that point,
Hmm.
start down the road of having that aha moment and
Hmm.
sort of seeing things differently. Because a lot of the stories we tell ourselves that, what is X person going to think about,
Hmm.
you know, about me going into coaching,
Hmm.
for example. We're probably making that story up in our head,
Hmm.
you know, and and that sort of thinking can hold us back from what we truly want to do because we're so concerned about what other people are going to think
Hmm.
that we stay stuck
Hmm.
rather than having a certain amount of courage and a
Hmm.
certain amount of bravery to go, let me be curious about what could happen.
Hmm.
And and some of it is also feeling like I'm the only person in the world
Hmm.
who thinks like this.
Hmm.
And so nobody's going to get what I'm doing, or nobody's going to help me or support me through this.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do as coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do. We support people, and we do it in a way that's non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we might be, who knows, we might be the only person close to that client who's not going to judge them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we help give our clients a safe space,
Mm-hmm.
right? I, it's, in that term, it's gotten watered down over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and but it's still true.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few places that people feel safe enough to not be judged about. For example, I want to leave journalism or whatever industry, but I'm worried about how people think.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody comes to me, they're already thinking, okay, I got to go. And our job as coaches is to hold that space for them.
Mm-hmm.
We might be, like I said, we might be the only people in their lives who can hold that space for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's holding it gently
Mm-hmm.
while they sort of, you know, knock about and try to figure it out, and have that support, have that accountability
Mm-hmm.
to to say, okay, this is a place for me to give this a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the cool things about coaching as well is there really aren't any wrong answers.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the answers for the people we work.
Mm-hmm.
They do. We help draw those answers out.
Mm-hmm.
But the people we work with have their answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's part of our work to help them get to that point.
Sure. And guess if you're anything like me, I like to try some of these questions out of myself first.
Yeah,
These coaching
yeah,
questions, right? This
yeah.
self-coaching, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and try it at home, as they say, right? And
Mm-hmm.
explore those thoughts. And so, what's a story that you used to tell yourself that you don't tell yourself anymore, where it's for your own breakthrough, maybe through self-coaching or
Mm-hmm.
using a coach where that story is where you challenge yourself and said, how do I know this is true, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
what's another way to look at it? So what's a story you used to tell yourself that you don't really tell yourself anymore?
It's for a long time between getting the coaching certifications and then getting laid off and starting this, I basically hid the fact that I was a coach.
Hmm.
Hid it. You know, it's again, what are people in the newsroom going to think? You
Hmm.
know, I, you know, told family members, told a couple of, really close, trusted friends. And and I think the story in my head was, how are people going to react when, you know, the layoff came in? It's like, okay, I have to start telling people now that I'm actually doing this.
Hmm.
And it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't as bad as the story I was making up in my head.
Hmm.
You know, I had the epiphany. The epiphany was a couple of weeks after I got laid off. I told a former top editor at the Journal that, hey, I'm going into coaching. It's, outside of journalism. Do you have any advice for me? And I was nervous, a little bit nervous about what his reaction was going to be.
Hmm.
But I was so gratified
Mhm.
that he, you know, he gave me advice,
Mhm.
really good advice, about looking out for people, you know, taking meetings, not getting stuck into things I don't want to do. I remember that to this day.
Mhm.
And again, that's one of these things where I had the courage, mustered up enough courage to send this guy an email.
Mhm.
He responded so graciously. And it's like, you know, you know, it felt like I was been spinning my wheels for years,
Mhm.
you know, about this. And what happens is when you start putting your story out in the world, and this is going to sound woo,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit woo,
Mhm.
all right, which is one reason, people can tend to be skeptical about coaching.
Mhm.
But you put your story out in the world,
Mhm.
people come to you
Mhm.
that you never met, and that's who, in certain ways, help you along the way.
Mhm.
You know, it's I've been so fortunate to have people come to me, you know, if it's just a cup of coffee and giving me, 30 minutes of their time to give me some advice,
Mhm.
or, you know, building a bond with people and having a weekly call with them,
Mhm.
that it's one of my coaches,
Mhm.
um not too long after I got laid off and started working with this group. She basically told me that if you want to do this, you're going to have to come out of hiding.
Mhm.
And, I wasn't on social media a lot. I could write, had, and had designs on doing a blog and a website, but sort of scared.
Mhm.
And instead of, it was her advice was the kick in the butt that I needed,
Mhm.
that if I hide myself, who's going to come to me?
Mhm.
And somebody might need my help.
Mhm.
And if I hide, they can't find me.
Mhm.
So that's why over the past year plus, I've got I've got a weekly blog, I've got a weekly newsletter,
Mhm.
I've got a weekly podcast. I post on social media, you know, often. It's still kind of scary.
Mhm.
All right. I had to deal with one troll once.
Mhm.
Luckily, just that once.
Mhm.
But somebody might benefit from what I have to say.
Mhm.
And they can't if I, you know, turtle,
Mhm.
and not come out of my shell.
Mhm.
You know.
Okay. So it sounds like that story that you were telling yourself was that other people will not look favorably upon leaving journalism to get into coaching. Was that the story? And
Yeah.
turned out to not be 100% true.
Not
That
100% true. There's always going to be skeptics,
mm,
and there are always going to be, like, the people who are Iowa, the people who are going to go like, what is he doing?
mhm,
You know, they, and maybe what I have isn't for them,
mhm,
but it's for somebody.
mhm. Okay. Love
And
that.
yeah,
Love
yeah.
that. So I feel like it's tough to overstate the um, the power of the right question at the right time, right? Questions can be amazing and super productive when asked at the right time in the right way. So, what's
Mhm.
another one of your one of your go-tos is like, how do you know that story is true, right?
Mhm.
So, what's another one of your go-to questions in your career coaching sessions?
Oh, okay. What does having that particular thing do,
Hmm.
right? And it could be like a title. What does having the title of news editor do?
Hmm.
Now, and the thing is, it's not just asking that question once,
Hmm.
right? Even, and the person might tell me having that title might mean X. Okay. What does having X do for you? And with that series of questions, trying to get to the root of what motivates that person.
Hmm.
Why is what's the why behind the why?
Hmm.
And understand and helping that person understand, you know, why they're going for the title, you know, why are they going for the raise?
Hmm.
And helping them get that clarity so they can make better decisions.
Hmm.
You know, I what it and what that reminds me of is I think Toyota uses that sort of question, which is why. And they call it the five whys.
Hmm.
And each level really gets to the root and the heart of the matter.
Hmm.
You know, why did, looking at car manufacturing, why did, why did this part not fit into, you know, why did this part not fit into the door? And what ends up happening is you keep asking why and why and why, and you find the defect, you find the fault. It has nothing to do with the door part. It's part of something, in the manufacturing process that led to that defect.
Hmm.
So it's on the surface, it sounds like the same question, but it really isn't. It's getting to the heart of the matter.
Okay. So with that example in career coaching of say a promotion,
Hmm.
with somewhere maybe they're sending an email to human
Hmm.
resources or they're asking for a meeting with their boss to discuss
Hmm.
promotion, and maybe you as a coach say, initially, why are you sending that email? And they say, well, because I would like a promotion, right? And
Exactly.
then you say, well, why? So what was that expression? It's the why behind the why. So
The
that
why behind the
oh,
why.
okay,
Yeah.
so they say, I'm sending that email because I would like a promotion. And then it's, well, why do you want the promotion? And then they answer that. And then is there further probing after that about why they want that said thing?
Yeah. Because, throwing out this example, maybe they want understand like why they want the promotion. And it might be to make their dad proud.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, may not have anything to do with the title, may not have to do anything to do with the money.
Hmm.
It might be about I just want to make my pop proud of me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you get to that level, you then understand what motivates them. And sometimes they when they say that, it might be the first time they say that out loud. And you got to hold space for that moment.
Hmm.
Is that moment where that person wants that promotion to make their dad proud? It could be really meaningful for them.
Hmm.
And sometimes the best thing to do is just to let them have that moment.
Hmm.
And so, and again, it's, you know, coaching, as you know,
Hmm.
it's not, you know, there are formulas and foundations that you have to acknowledge and use, but
Hmm.
sometimes it's like you have to go by feel.
Hmm.
what's the client feeling at that moment,
Mhm.
and hold space for that. And I think we do that well.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely relate to that the non-judgmental curiosity for the
Mhm.
reason you just stated. If somebody says they're asking or they're looking for promotion, one might assume, oh, it's because they would like more money, right? Or
Mhm.
more prestige within the
Mhm.
organization. And if we're not careful, if we start projecting our own values or our own assumptions onto what they're looking for, that could go
Right.
sideways pretty quickly, right?
It,
Counterproductive, because then we're not really hearing or understanding
mhm.
their why, right?
Yeah. And I think one of one of the things we do well as coaches, and I think this connects back to journalism, is active listening,
Mhm,
and not listening to just answer whatever they're saying, but just like really listening
mhm,
to it. And they might give you a nugget
mhm,
that, they might give you a bolt out of the blue that could change the direction of the coaching program for them.
mhm,
And you have to sort of pull on that string a little bit and just keep
mhm,
listening, keep answering the questions, and not asking just asking questions to that you've got a list and you have to go through the list.
mhm.
Can I make a quick aside for a second and
Of
talking about
course.
coaching?
Please, please. Yeah.
One of the best interviewers out there, I think, is Dan Patrick,
Mhm,
the former ESPN co-host. He's got a knack for active listening.
mhm,
He might have, his questions while he's going, interviewing somebody for his radio show. But if that person says something that leaves a splinter in his brain, he's going to go to that question.
mhm,
And I think that's what we have to do as coaches is not as, do that. We can't do that as coaches, and we can't do that as journalists, which is just run through our list of questions and make that the whole thing is, you know, that person might say something really off the wall or really shocking, or really surprising. And we have to be aware enough to say, okay, don't know where that came from. So
mhm,
let's go down that rabbit trail
mhm,
and see what's happening there.
mhm,
And I think not just as coaches,
mhm,
but as people,
mhm,
I think we need to do that as well.
mhm,
I think we need when we listen like that, bring that active listening to wherever we are.
mhm,
It helps people be seen,
mhm.
which is really, I think, really important nowadays.
Okay. So somebody might be listening to this and hear things like, oh, active listening or
Mhm.
holding space or being non-judgmental and so on. Well, hold on a sec, that's therapy. That's therapy. So what's the difference between coaching and therapy? The main
I,
difference.
I think coaching is more future paced,
Mhm,
future oriented, and therapy looks back at the past a
mhm,
little bit.
mhm,
We don't do therapy.
mhm,
Okay. We don't do it. I've got a scope of practice.
mhm,
Those are my guardrails for what I do as a coach.
mhm,
And it, my scope of practice very clearly states I don't do therapy.
mhm,
And I have to be aware enough of where the client is to say, okay, what's happening right now is way over my skis.
mhm,
Let me point this person to a therapist. Let me point this person to the resources that they need. I
mhm.
think that's a smart thing to do for us as coaches rather than, you know, getting in territory that we shouldn't get into.
Mhm. Okay. So when it comes to those powerful questions and those hopefully aha moments from the client, how does that translate now into the future, right? Into results, right? Whereas therapy is a little bit more grappling with the past,
Mm-hmm.
coaching is more about the future. So how do you then turn that, make that pragmatic? in terms of results? Once they have that aha moment, that's
Mhm.
great, but what's next?
You know, I would say stacking wins,
Hmm.
not letting that one particular moment
Hmm.
be everything.
Hmm.
Allowing that to continue to build your foundation
Hmm.
at, going for that promotion, you know, you know, opening that coffee shop that you've always wanted to open,
Hmm.
for example, building, you know, building blocks. One of the things that I want to do, want to help people as a coach to do is to have a higher baseline from
Hmm.
which they operate. Like after the 12 weeks that we work together, you're at a different place in your life,
Hmm.
different good place. And having that trickle down and filter into the rest of your life.
Hmm.
So it's really important to keep stacking those small wins
Hmm.
and not in yeah, celebrating that win
Hmm.
and going, okay, how can we build on this?
Hmm.
What's one small thing we can do? And
Hmm.
I think we sort of get caught up in the big celebratory, huge win or accomplishment. And then as you were talking about with diet, we've sort of fall back to that old baseline after.
Hmm.
And I think as coaches, that's not what we want to see the people we work with do.
Okay. So talked about it, AKA like this was maybe a backup plan, right? You were a journalist for quite some time, even
Mm-hmm.
from a young age, and then 26 years at the Wall Street Journal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this backup plan, which was also you were getting certifications, right? You were studying, you were practicing, right? You were probably self-coaching, trying it out on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But all that being said, that there's this moment, and I'm gonna get personal for a moment, where that phone call comes in with the layoff, and I know even with somebody with a back, there's a lot of folks that don't have a backup plan, and they get that call that is the dreadful call for lots of
Mm-hmm.
kind of lost your job, right? There's people that fear for that their whole lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had a backup plan, but still, I got to believe that was a pretty intense moment. So maybe tell me about that phone call a bit and how you felt and on the call then thereafter.
You know, it, it was, it's one of these things where my boss, the HR person, it was basically, you know, they read from the script
Hmm.
and it was, perfunctory. And the thing is, it's my 26-year career at the Journal ended in 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And it's like there's shock.
Hmm.
There's oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? And it's like, I don't know, head spinning, you know, calling people, calling, people close to me. What am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? I, you know, the next day I went out. It's like, and the thing is, I had taken part in our normal morning news meeting
Hmm.
the hour before.
Hmm.
So it's sort of like it was weird, it's weird, trippy, you the ground, broke beneath my feet, you know, had, had, had sort of my assignments through, for the day was going to help with those. And it's like, okay, I can't do anything about those now.
Hmm.
And so the next day I went for a walk. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Hmm.
Again, still not settled on anything.
Hmm.
2 days later, I went for a hike. All right. I need to get away from screens. I need to get, I need to get outside and just, take a walk through nature.
Hmm.
And I, it, I can see it now where I'm on the hike. you know, this weird feeling when, you're sort of quote unquote outside playing while
Mhm.
everybody else is working.
Mhm.
And I, it was on that hike when I went, okay, wait a minute. You've got two coaching certifications, one in life coaching, one in health coaching. This is happening a lot faster than you wanted it to,
Mhm.
but I think it's time
Mhm.
for you to do what you've been wanting to do for years.
Mhm.
If you don't do it now, when are you going to do it?
Mhm.
And so came back home, started the process and started letting people know. And it is really, you know, if I had to do it all over again, and I was talking to another guy who wrote a book about layoffs, and I told him if I had to do it all over again, I would have waited a week before jumping in. There was this fear that I had
Mhm.
that I have to move now. I've got to go now. But one of the things he talked about in his book was giving yourself time to grieve.
Mhm.
It's a lot, especially if you've been, in a place like 26 years.
Mhm.
If I had to do it all over again, I would have taken a week off
Mhm. Mhm.
and just decompressed and then gone into coaching because as I told you, I was starting to pick up that day's assignments. It's like it's going from 100 miles an hour to zero
Mhm.
in the blink of an eye.
Mhm.
Right, that hurts.
Mhm.
So I that I would do all over.
Mhm.
Now that being said, you know I'm fortunate to have had that backup plan. A
Mhm.
lot of people don't. A lot of people, again, when it comes down to identity, you've got blinders on. This is the only thing I know how to do. Are you sure about that?
Mhm.
Is there something that, you've really passionate about or you're really good at outside of the office? Let's talk about that.
Mhm.
So maybe you do have a backup plan. You just haven't really considered it or thought about it as a backup plan.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. And with, we'll say journalism and coaching, right? So let's say with those two,
Mhm.
overall, what is your most proudest accomplishment?
Oh, starting this next chapter in my 50s.
Mhm.
I mean, it's scary having to do something completely different at this age.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's exciting as well.
Mhm.
I feel like this is the place that I want to be in,
Mhm.
the place that's the fit for me.
Mhm.
And I'm, what's great is with journalism and with coaching and entrepreneurship, I'm learning stuff every day.
Mhm.
And I am gratified to be in that position.
Mhm.
And I'm gratified that I've got that opportunity. I'm not saying it's not scary. It's
Mhm.
scary. Okay.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's really exciting
Okay.
because I get for the yeah, first time, in a long time, I get to decide what I want to do.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay. So I heard a little bit about age there, right? So being in your 50s, right? I think on your website it talks about your clients are mostly Gen Xers, journalists, and mission-driven storytellers, right? So I always struggle with this a little bit with the generation. So Gen X is roughly Gen X is what ages usually at the moment?
they were usually born the mid 60s
Mid-60s.
to the mid 80s.
Sounds right. Okay. And
Yeah.
then comes the millennials, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're Gen X.
Gen X. Yeah.
Okay. And there's these patterns now in the field where the business side of things has kind of shifted in journalism, right? So there might be maybe more potential clients than in the past because of these shifts. Business wise, do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's you have people, you know, you have people in their jobs who've been there, you know, they may have been in their jobs for 10 plus years or in the field for 20 plus years.
Mhm.
And so those are the people that I'm reaching out to
Mhm.
and working with and want them, and want to have conversations with,
Mhm.
you know.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit about development earlier, right?
Mhm.
Personal development, professional development has kind of always been an interest of yours, right? Which ties into your career, your active career right now, right? And so, what other areas of personal development or professional development have you always kind of had as an interest over time? We talked about nutrition coaching, we talked about career coaching, we talked about other. But what else has been on that, or reading certain books? What's another area that interests you in development?
You know what I'm going to put in that category? Running.
Hmm.
I was not an athlete in high school. I was in the band. I was on the newspaper staff. Okay, so
Hmm.
sports in high school wasn't my thing, and I find personal development. I find running to be a great vehicle for personal development, and not just running, but for me, it's running. I've always had an an interest in ultra endurance events,
Hmm.
things like the Ironman has fascinated me lately. Past few years, ultra running events have interest me.
Hmm.
We there's you know it's it's running is a crucible for life. It's a crucible
Hmm.
where you get out of it what you put into it,
Hmm.
and you you know you come out of these things a different person,
Hmm.
you know, and you know, you, you know, you, and you have different experiences, and those experiences help shape you. And it also teaches you how to endure, how to be resilient, how not to freak out when things aren't perfect,
Hmm.
you know. Um, you know, I'm in a training cycle for a half marathon right now. And a couple of those runs, they've been in the rain.
Hmm.
You know, it's rather than go, oh my God, it's raining, I can't go outside. As long as there's no lightning or no tornadoes, I'm going.
Hmm.
And what happens is it feels like, you know, it's, I'm trying to teach myself how to deal with discomfort
Hmm.
and how to deal with less than ideal conditions.
Hmm.
And what ends up happening is, yes, I'm soaked to the bone. You
Hmm.
know, all my clothes are just soaked. My shoes are waterlogged,
Hmm.
but I made it through.
Hmm.
And so when it comes to race day, if it's raining, it's like, okay, I've been here. I know it's going to stink. I know it's not going to be great,
Mhm.
And I've gone through this.
Mhm.
I've got the experience. And so that's, running for me is that vehicle
Mhm.
to sort of, to show myself that I can do hard things.
Okay. And today was 11 miles. Did I hear that right?
It was 11 miles. Yes.
Okay.
I'm running a half marathon in a couple of weeks.
Okay. What's that the big goal that you have for running? Because I earlier heard there's something like an Ironman or something, or you've run a marathon before, yeah?
Run a marathon 10 years ago.
Okay. So
Years ago.
what's that thing that's the white whale in the world of running that might be a goal of yours?
I don't know. It's weird because this is the first half marathon I've run in 6 years.
Mhm.
I, had reached a point that that season in my life was done.
Mhm.
Not the running, but the spending 6 months to get ready for two half marathons a year. I was done with that. And it felt great for to not have that big goal for
Mhm.
5 years,
Mhm.
because for 5 years beforehand, that was the thing.
Mhm.
Two half marathons a year, the one marathon I did, spent most of my, a good portion of my year in training.
Mhm.
It's just like, I just want to run.
Mhm.
And so now I'm dipping a toe back into it.
Mhm.
Um, I'm looking at possibly a couple of trail half marathons
Mhm.
in the future to do something different.
Mhm.
Trail, I'm got into hiking in the past couple of years, got back into hiking in the past couple of years. That's sort of morphed into trail running.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, sometime next year, I think a trail half marathon is going to be in my future.
Okay. So overall, with this podcast theme is usually going to be coaching and teaching and
Mm-hmm.
training and mentoring. So that's kind of our number one. We have a couple other themes that we're going to weave in throughout the episodes over time, but we
Mm-hmm.
might have some trainers listening in. So it's going to be might get a chuckle out of this because I like to do the icebreakers at the end. People who do group coaching and corporate or whatever, icebreakers usually start at the beginning. I like to do it at the end, just some fun questions. So we'll wrap up with
Mm-hmm.
like two or three just kind of fun questions,
Yeah,
kind of
sure.
thought experiments. So,
Okay.
and then I would love to get your contact information to everybody, social media and otherwise. All right. So a few quick funny questions at the end.
Go for it.
So, if you could travel to only the future or the past, which one would it be, and why? If in a time machine.
Ooh. Mm. Wow, that's a tough one. I think into the future,
Mhm.
um, maybe 100 years from now,
Mhm.
because I want to see if we can actually build a base on Mars,
Mhm.
and what kind of technology is that going to take to
Mhm.
get.
Mhm.
I'm really interested to see. Would be really interested to see that.
Okay. Um, what about a place that you really would like to travel to that you haven't traveled to before?
Oh, okay. I was getting ready to say place I would love to go back to. I know I'm twisting your question out. Place I would love to go back to is Brussels.
Okay.
Really good city to be in.
Mhm.
Um, very, very manageable city to be in. Very livable city to be in. Place I haven't been to before. I think Cape Town,
Mhm.
South Africa. Um, would love to do that. I think there is still a jazz festival in Cape Town.
Mhm.
I would love to go to. South African wines are very good. Would love to, love to do a vineyard tour of that.
Mhm. Okay. Interesting. And throw one more your way. Historical figure. If you could have dinner with a historical figure, who would that historical figure be?
Mm. easily MLK,
Mhm.
Luther King Jr.
Mhm.
Um, what was his internal monologue like as he was leading the civil rights movement
Mhm.
in the 50s and 60s?
Mhm.
And how was he able to do that
Mhm.
at such a relatively young age?
Mhm.
He was 39 when he was assassinated, at least 38 or 39. And to have that kind of leadership on such young shoulders
Mhm.
is extraordinary.
Mhm.
I want to find out more about that.
Very interesting. So definitely want to get the contact information out. But first, want to say thank you for being a guest today. I got a lot out of this. I was coming into it, I was very curious about journalism and
Mhm.
looking forward to talking shop with you about coaching. And I got a lot out of this, and I'm hoping our listeners did too. Very insightful. It was good to learn about you as a person as well. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open and very insightful. And
Thank you for the opportunity.
you're very welcome. And yeah, let's take our time with these coordinates because I feel like sometimes on either on the radio or podcast where it gets
Mhm.
rushed through and
Yeah.
somebody wants to get in touch with and they can't because it was kind of rushed through. So let's take our time with the best ways to get in touch with you and we could read those out and whether it's email, social media, whatever you want to share. So people have follow-up questions, want to engage with you. And
Mhm.
it could also be somebody besides a journalist or Gen X. It could be a different somebody looking to change careers, career transition in an immediate adjacency or even a different field entirely? Okay.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely. My website is richardtaliaferro.com.
Okay.
And the and it's the last name is spelled Taliaferro,
Mhm.
richardtaliaferro.com. And email is richard@richardtaliaferro.com. Um, I'm on LinkedIn. So search for my name and you'll see me pop up there as career coach. And I'm also on Instagram as well. I post a lot of my blog and newsletter and podcast on both LinkedIn and Instagram. And my Instagram is instagram.com
Mhm.
slash RICHTALI.
Okay. It certainly sounds like you're no longer that, as you called it, being a turtle in any way, shape, or form. It sounds like you're the anti-turtle.
Yeah. Yeah,
You,
coming out of hiding.
you're
Yes.
coming out of hiding, and and also we're gonna get this podcast is gonna be on YouTube and Facebook, and soon it's gonna be on Apple and Spotify. So you'll be even less and less of a in hiding as time goes on. You're fully out of your shell, and
Okay. Love the sound of that.
I know it takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there, especially when it's a passion of yours to coach and being an entrepreneur. So I can relate. Not easy to do. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open.
Sure.
Thank you for putting your story out there. And it's great to have you. And look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks for the opportunity, Matthew. I really enjoyed it.
All right, Richard. You have a good one.
You too.
Okay.